right?
Yes, and the reason I brought up the Pope earlier is that when you really get into an analysis of world finance, ultimately everything leads back to the Vatican.
Mm.
Because when you look at the national underworld from a historical perspective, and you go back to the formation of the Catholic Church and then the development of Western economies and all that, the Church has been there as a power player in one place for so long that what they've done is they've worked themselves right into the very, very core of the financial structure of the planet. So when we speak about the Pope, I think we need to add that as an element, as well as the issue of patriarchal abuse and sexual abuse and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I'll just say one more thing about it regarding the fourth dimension. The biggest control factor in the fourth dimension is the world religions. The world religions came about as a development of the national underworld. That's the 5,125-year historical cycle. And so as soon as we see the beginning of civilization, like 3,100 years ago, we also see the development of religion coming in tandem with civilization. And so the theocratic forces, that's the forces of the kings. There's an issue of divine kingship, and for thousands of years, people believed that if they had a divine king, then the king was in touch with God, and everything was just fine. And of course, that enabled a creation of the most incredible manipulative system on this planet for 5,000 years. And so I think probably that the collapse of religion is actually the key to everything in the fourth dimension, because religion is the most potent control factor in that dimension. You follow me?
Yeah.
So I'm what I'm working on right now, I almost got a PhD in patristics, which is early church studies, but I decided not to do it. I got a master's in theology, but then I stopped there because I knew that I would get so angry with all of the teachers that I would never be able to get through the program. But what I was looking for was the keys to how they got this program in place in the first place, back 1,500 years ago. And so I really think what we're doing right now is we're actually dismantling that program. And it's not about everybody understanding theology and knowing about papal politics and all that kind of stuff, because very few people understand it. All it takes is people just realizing they don't believe anymore. And when people in Germany are faced with the just outrageous levels of abuse that obviously the Vatican was deeply involved in, a lot of people are just walking out of the church, and that's all it's going to take to collapse the program.
So, I mean, do you think then that all of this goes hand in hand in that sense, in terms of where we're going leading up to 2011 as well? I guess I want to go back to that idea. If there's a delay in the implementation of the changing energies, if you will, do you still think that 2011 kind of will be the date, or will it come later on our level of this?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question, and so I channeled this information back in 1995, and it's the only thing I've ever channeled, and I'm not going to channel anything more, I hope, because it's very hard to do that. But the Pleiadians said back in 1995 that all 9 dimensions would open at the end of the Mayan calendar, which I now know is 2011. So the idea would be that during 2011, now there's two factors we have to keep track of here regarding 2011. First of all, we go into day 7 of the galactic underworld, November 3rd, 2010. So it's important now that we're coming up to this time to realize that day 7 occurs first, and then 3 months after that, during February 2011, we get another time acceleration called the universal underworld. So the day 7 achievement of the galactic underworld seems to suggest, I think the whole galactic underworld has been about the development of technology, and it's been about people connecting with each other at a technological level, which is gradually is destroying the structures of the planetary and the national underworld. That's what I would say the galactic underworld has been about. So the idea would be that when day 7 arrives, then what happens is we come to the final achievement, the final creation of day 7. And so, Henrik, doesn't it feel like some kind of incredible connective fusion happening at that point as day 7 comes in. Like people are so fascinated with this latest Apple product. What's it called? The iPod or whatever.
iPad or whatever, yeah.
iPad, yeah. Well, a lot of people are, I don't have one because I don't do much technology, but a lot of people are telling me that there's all kinds of chips in there that access galactic locations and stuff like that. So I have a feeling something's going on technologically where a fusion is going to happen when we go into day 7. And then assuming that there's some kind of fusion, what would that mean? Well, it would mean that the connective power of the 4th dimension will start dominating over this dualistic black-white global elite control pattern. You see that?
Yeah.
And people won't necessarily understand what's going on, but I think what they will suddenly find themselves doing is they'll suddenly find themselves seeing both sides of the coin. Now, for example, the United States is the biggest terrorist and the greatest producer and user of weapons of mass destruction on the planet. And yet, the United States has made it look like they're the good guys, and everybody else on the planet are all the terrorists. You get my drift?
Sure.
Well, all of a sudden, I think that kind of mentality just won't work anymore. Imagine if suddenly Americans woke up and saw how this game is really being played. So I think it's going to be just a massive opening of consciousness where people are going to see both sides of the coin, and then they're going to start to go into super connection. And then the Pleiadians said, remember, they said at the end of the Mayan calendar is when all 9 dimensions would open. So then it would look to me like when the universal underworld time acceleration starts in February, then all of a sudden all 9 dimensions are going to open up, blammo. Now, what would that be like? Well, what happens is, remember divine consciousness in the 8th dimension?
Yeah.
Which we can call God if we want to.
Right.
That's okay. And then remember geometry in the 6th dimension, the world of forms and really high ideals. Well, higher consciousness and getting in touch with the divine mind and all that kind of stuff exists in those dimensions. And it's not in the 4th dimension. Now, the 4th dimension is where all the world religions are. So what happens for people, and still is happening at this current moment, remember I said early on in the program that the upper 5 dimensions come through the 4th dimension, because the 4th dimension for us is the dimension of intuition and feeling. And so I think what's going to happen during the universal underworld is all of a sudden, instead of getting your divine consciousness connection through the 4th dimension and then having it turn into one of the world religions, all of a sudden it becomes direct. And this was one of the teachings of the Gnostics. The religion that got dumped 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago was Gnosticism, which was a form of Christianity. And Gnosticism is a very simple thing. It just says you can have a direct connection if you want it, and you don't have to go through any religion or any priest.
Right.
So the idea here would be that those 9 dimensions are going to blast open the minute the universal underworld is going to come, and it's going to like really just straighten out the way people tune in to all of these realities. Is the way I put it.
So in some way, also that to me that means that currently there is a kind of a bottleneck or something is withholding this from already happening. And what is that force? Is it just a cosmic alignment? Is it physical? Is it non-physical? Is it out there? Is it in us? What is it?
Well, this is where I am so grateful to Carl Kalaman. And he was one of the few male scientists that I connected with who was willing to actually talk to me. Carl Kalaman is the one who has the answer to your question.